I dropped 10% body fat from 32 down to 22%, all whilst I was working a desk-based job full-time, and without relying on crash diets or starving myself. And this is the exact same advice that I'd give to all my clients who come in for DEXA scans when we are looking at how to create a fat loss phase. Trust me, I have made all the mistakes that I'm sure you guys have made too. Eating 0 carbs, 600 calories a day, fasting, literally getting back from work and being so bloody exhausted from the work day. And because I've eaten nothing, I don't want to move at all. Not being able to recognise myself in the mirror because I have gotten so big compared to what I'm used to, completely been there. Hating looking at myself in photos, literally not taking photos of myself like a year. It was quite tough. You might envy how your kind of 20-year-old body looked, thinking, oh, it was so much easier to look the way I did back then, and how come I don't look like that anymore, even though I kept everything the same? Again, completely normal things to be thinking. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 key ways that you can reduce your body fat percentage whilst having to sit at a desk for the majority of your week. Point 4 is something that not many people really speak about or even give thought to, but it's a huge determinant as to if your fat loss phase is going to work, if it's going to last, and if you're actually going to see visible change. All right, let's dive into it. Number 1 is you have to eat in between your basal metabolic rate and your total daily energy expenditure. There is a happy medium window for sufficient fat loss without losing muscle. And it is really important that you are not under eating, right? So your body needs a certain amount of calories in order for it to function, right? This is called your BMR. It is the calories required to keep you alive, depending on how much lean mass your body has, how much muscle and lean mass you have. Really would recommend getting a DEXA scan done because then we can work out your exact BMR and we can work out exactly how much calories you burn throughout the day, as well as all the other benefits that come with a DEXA scan: bone density, visceral fat, body fat percentage, etc. Would always recommend getting one done. But what a lot of women do is they'll eat less than what their body burns at rest. I've had women coming in eating, 1,200, 1,300 calories a day, and their weight doesn't shift that much. And it's because there is it's a non-negotiable that your body needs a certain amount of calories, and if you feed it less than that, it's not going to be forgiving of giving away its fat. Kind of goes back to that kind of caveman era of if your body doesn't know when it's going to get enough food, it's going to hold on to your fat for warmth, protection, and safety. So once we know your BMR, we can then work out how many calories that your body burns on an average day based off of your sleep, your job. Obviously, you guys are going to be sat at a desk for a majority of your day, your step count, and your weekly exercise. And then you just have to find that happy medium window. What I like to do is, if we're going through an aggressive fat loss phase, then a 500 calorie deficit would be the lowest I'd go. For a lot of women who are working at a desk, sometimes they don't even burn 500 calories over their BMR. So again, it's very different person to person, but you want to be eating in between those numbers to lose fat. Say, for example, you're burning 2,000 calories a day and you eat 1,700 calories a day. That means you've got an average of a 300 calorie deficit throughout the week, which means you've lost 300 grams of fat that week. That's how a calorie deficit works. Okay, point number 2, keep an eye on your electrolytes and your micronutrients. What is really, really common when women are going through fat loss is that they'll increase their water take by quite a lot, sometimes even doubling it. If you're drinking like 3-4 litres a day, I get it, it's to try and keep yourself full and not feel as hungry. But it also means you're really under-mineralised. Your sodium's going to be quite low, your potassium's going to be quite low, magnesium, all that sort of stuff. And that is what can make you feel quite flat, fatigued, dizzy, weak. And a lot of people will assume it's just because you started a diet or you started eating healthy, and they assume that their body is just not able to carry on with eating in a calorie deficit. Not exactly the case. Sometimes it is literally just you drank so much water, you don't actually have any electrolytes left in your body, so you need to make sure that you try and increase that. When you sit for long hours in the day, your stress is high, likely your caffeine intake is going to be quite high as well. And if that increases, then you're going to lose your minerals. Low electrolytes can increase your fatigue, increase your food cravings, they reduce your training output quite a lot, especially if you're going to the gym and you're lifting weights. So best thing to do is, yes, increase your water intake by all means. Just make sure that you're having some sort of electrolytes with that, because again, a lot of times it's going to be slightly lower due to having a reduced calorie input. And to supplement that, your micronutrient intake is also something that can reduce whilst you're going into calorie deficit and something to be mindful of. This is why I'm also very pro data, and I would always recommend getting a blood test to see if things are low, especially if you've been on contraception a long time. Me personally, my vitamin B12 was quite low on my blood test. Again, I've been on contraception for like 8 years, and that plays a big part of fatigue and how you feel. So it's really important that you kind of supplement that as best as you can. Always go for blood test over guesswork, in my opinion. So water, electrolytes early in the day, and supplementing on micronutrient deficiencies if you have them. All of that is going to reduce the kind of false hunger, and also not make you feel as flat throughout the day, which your body or your brain is just assuming is because you're eating less. Point number 3 is your sleep quality. You quite literally, your sleep is such an important part of fat loss, such an important part. When you sleep poorly or when you have less than 6 hours sleep constantly, your leptin and your ghrelin hormones are out of whack. It will increase its hunger hormones, and you won't feel full either, or at least that's how I felt. I notice it straight away when I have less than 6 hours sleep. I'm starving the whole day and nothing seems to stop that. Other things when you have less sleep is that your insulin sensitivity drops, which is going to be a huge part of fat loss as well. You're going to get more cravings, your cortisol rises quite a lot, and your recovery is poor. All of that will be kind of combined to how well your body wants to kind of get rid of its fat, if that makes sense. And look, if you are working long hours at a desk, sometimes 12, 14 hours a day, there are some things that are obviously just going to be really hard for you to try and fix because your job is going to be your number one priority. But we all have to sleep every single night, and improving your sleep quality is going to be something that's going to help you overall. It might be that you don't actually have loads of time in the day for exercising or moving around too much, but one thing you can actually do to see some real physical change is to track your sleep. Using an Oura, an Apple Watch, a Whoop, whatever it is you use. Obviously, Oura and Whoop are going to be your best ones. But your sleep quality's got to improve. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't have enough time to sleep. I only get 6 hours a night, and I don't physically have enough time in my day to sleep longer. Well, then we've got to focus on the quality. Your sleep latency, your REM sleep, your deep sleep, and your wake-ups, or kind of like your duration. But your wake-ups, how much you wake up during the night. These are all things that can be improved without having to actually increase the amount of hours you sleep currently. And it's all to do with making sure we don't have caffeine really late into the evening, making sure that our last meal is a couple hours before we go to bed. It's not kind of straight away. Trying to get into some sort of wind down routine, blocking out blue light, maybe putting some candles on, trying to best wind down before you go to sleep. And then the flip side of that, in the morning, if you can try and get some natural light into your room straight away, that's going to help massively. But definitely sleep is a huge part of a woman in their 30s, especially if you have kids and everything else. Your sleep is the one thing that you do anyway, so you might as well try and improve it. Point 4, again, the one that isn't really spoken about too much, is how you are structuring your meals and what is part of that. Again, if you're kind of in your 30s or 40s, or you're kind of approaching menopause, then your hormones are going to be changing, and you have to make sure that you're doing things to kind of stay in line with that, which maybe you didn't have to do when you were 20. First thing is making sure that we have some food quite early after we've woken up, usually within that 30-minute window. Again, cortisol is going to rise as we wake up to wake ourselves up. It's going to stay high. And if you aren't eating until, 11 o'clock, then that's going to stay elevated way too long. So the best thing you can do is in the morning have something that is high in protein 30 minutes after you wake up in that window. Doesn't have to be a full meal, doesn't have to be your main breakfast, but just something just to kind of say to your body, okay, I'm up, I'm awake. Cortisol can now be reduced. High protein early in the day is also going to help stabilize your blood sugar. It's going to make you less hungry throughout the day. It's going to help to reduce your cravings. So that would be what you would be doing for breakfast. For lunch, I would typically go for like the lightest calorie meal of the day is going to be lunch for me. Look, if you've got kids at home, if you live with a partner, dinner time can be a hard one to try and make the healthiest, I guess you could say, especially when it's at the end of the day. Decision fatigue and everything else is going to kick in. Most of the time you just don't want to. So what I usually do is go through a kind of like a lighter calorie lunch, but still, with great macros to keep you nice and full, but it's on the lighter side. That's usually going to be the meal for me that's going to be slightly lower in carbohydrates, and then I will increase my carbohydrate intake around if I'm going to be training that day. Right, so if I'm going to be in the gym, maybe I won't have any carbs with my actual lunch itself, but if I'm going to the gym like after work, before dinner, I'll have like a squares bar and like 5 dates. Those carbs before I go train. So that's how I'd structure it. High protein meal or high protein breakfast, try and eat something quite soon after you wake up, keeping my lunch slightly lighter on the carbs, and then increasing my carbohydrate intake as a snack before I go to the gym or before I do any sort of training. And then dinner is something that can be slightly more lax given it's in your calorie window. When you're working 50 hours a week, the more decisions you remove, the better it's going to be. So if you can keep one meal repeatable and one meal prepped, that's usually going to be a huge help. Breakfast, Monday to Friday, keep it the same, don't have to think about it. Something high protein, like a yogurt for example. And if you can try and keep one meal prepped, even if it's just like making all your lunches on the Sunday. And then again, you don't really have to think about much until dinner at that point. Last point is just trying to increase your activity multiplier. A lot of the times, if you're sitting at a desk, you're not moving, your activity multiplier is going to be under 1.4. From a consultant perspective, ideally, I'd want that to be higher, just because I will want the calories that you want to be eating to actually be achievable and doable. You know, if you're only kind of burning like 1,600 calories a day, and we've got to be eating less than that if you want to lose fat, that's really hard to do with 3 meals a day. I know you guys don't have a lot of time, and that's completely fine. You know, I'm not expecting you to go out and train 6 days a week, but if you can find a session that you can do it on the weekend, if it's just lifting weights once a week, it's better than nothing. If you can try and go for a 10-minute walk after dinner, if you can try and go for a 10-minute walk during lunch, something to just try and improve the amount that you are moving per day is going to help with your overall sustainability. Because again, the more that you kind of sit still and don't move, given it's part of your job, you absolutely have to do it, it's going to be harder to eat the little amount of calories that is needed to lose fat. And that is it. So keeping an eye on electrolytes, making sure you're eating between your BMR and your TDE, improving your sleep quality, structuring your meals based off of the macros and decision making, and I think that's everything. If you'd like to know any more about what I do, I run a 12-week program for high achieving women who are working many hours a week. You can check my website or you can check my social media down below. I run a 12-week offer going through lots of different medical testing, optimisation of health, looking at medical testing, things like DEXA scans, blood tests, exercise tests, using those results to tailor a very, very specific plan to you, and then keeping track of your nutrition, training programs, sleep and recovery using lots of different metrics. Feel free to check out my website or my social media down below, and I hope I'll see you again soon.